Is the all-new 2024 Chevy Trax a game changer for affordable vehicles in America? That's what Andre and I want to figure out in this full review of specifically the RS version of this new Chevy Trax. Let's check it out. One of the biggest changes with the new Chevy Trax are its proportions. Compared to the old model, this car is now 4 inches shorter, it's 2 inches wider, and it's 11 inches longer in total, 6 inches of which comes from the wheelbase. So it is considerably bigger than it used to be, so much so that in most dimensions, other than height, this is actually bigger than the Trailblazer. Now the RS model of the new Trax gets a couple special elements. Around the front, that starts with the grille, so you can see RS badging, but this whole front grille area is specific to the RX, and there are a lot of styling cues on this car that are similar to the Blazer, but funny enough, the guy who did the exterior design work on this car made sure to point out to us that items like this X shape on each end of the grille bar here actually started with the Trax, even though we've seen it on some other Chevy product that ended up being released sooner. And then as we come around this car on the side, we'll see another thing that is specific to the RS model here, and that is these 19-inch wheels that have the machine face. So depending on which model of this car you get, you'll have anything from a 17 to an 18 to a 19-inch wheel here on the RS. Still some plastic cladding along the side to let you know this is a crossover, even though size-wise this really isn't far off of being basically a hatchback. And then coming around the back, one of this car's best styling elements are these flared out fenders with body lines that point toward the front end of the car. Andre and I are pulling onto the wonderful Blue Ridge Parkway.
It's famous.
In the RS version of the new Chevy Trax.
But not any RS, it's a 2RS.
Yeah, it is. So this is the fancy RS because you can get a more base model RS that doesn't have the bigger screens, doesn't have nearly as kitted out of an interior, doesn't even have the proximity key.
But this one does.
Yeah, so this is right in line with the Active for being among the top trims. This is obviously the more sporty kind of designed one, even though power output's the same, still 137 horsepower. But actually it's funny in talking about the engine in this car, Andre, you had a good point.
So I was thinking that, well, this is a 1.2 liter 3-cylinder.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a turbocharged engine. But the horsepower, correct me if I'm wrong, is 137?
Yeah.
Which means it has more than 100 horsepower per liter of displacement.
And initially when Andre said this, I was laughing at him.
Yes,
but he was serious. And then I thought about it. If my 5.7 liter Corvette had more than 570 horsepower,
that would be something, right?
I'd be pretty happy.
Right. And because they're using turbocharging, it's possible, right? You can have, a lot of torque and a lot of horsepower in a small, tiny engine.
Yeah, now obviously 137 horsepower, 162 pound-feet of torque from a 1.2 liter turbo 3-cylinder is not a boatload of power. However, this is also not that heavy of a car. It's about 3,200 pounds. So here, we've got a little straight here. You've got no problem accelerating to merge with traffic. No one's going to buy this car because it's fast, but it's plenty fast enough to keep up with modern traffic. It doesn't really feel slow.
And the engineering team we were talking to, they said that compared to the previous Trax, they did improve the 0 to 60 performance. Yeah. And also they improved the efficiency. Yeah,
so it's 28 miles per gallon in the city, 32 miles per gallon highway, 30 combined. So decently economical, even though this car has gotten noticeably bigger. Even though this is an entry-level vehicle, there are actually a few pretty good things that you get here on the interior. For one, these seats say RS here. They've got some red stripes and red accents, including the stitching, and you even get some of those red accents in the back. And then here on the dash, you have red in the vents. You have a little bit of red trim on this 2RS model. It says RS right there on the dash. You have a little bit of brighter trim here, a lot of piano black, and obviously there's mixed feelings about the piano black. It is hard to keep clean, but it does look good when it's brand new. And then here on the shifter, it says RS. But my favorite thing is this steering wheel, which on this RS model is slightly flat on the bottom. It has this glossier trim here, and then a pretty nice fabric around the outside with some red stitching, so it's a relatively sporty feeling steering wheel. And this door card is mostly hard plastics, but you do have an insert here of some soft touch material with red stitching, and then this textured material here. And speaking of textures, there is a lot of textured material across the dash as well that gives it a little bit more character. Firing up the Trax, you see one of the best things that GM has been doing recently, even on a lot of their more entry-level vehicles. So this is an 11-inch center screen, and then in front of me as the driver, I have an 8-inch instrument cluster, and those are higher optioned screens for this higher end trim of this car. If you get a base model, you'll have instead a small 3.5-inch screen between two analog gauges in front of you as a driver, and then you'll have an 8-inch screen here in the center. These screens that you get are very premium considering the price point. They look really sharp, they're high resolution, and it's not a bad system to use. However, we have noticed a little bit of lagginess on this screen in this car occasionally, but otherwise, I mean, it is a really sharp looking display. Check this out, you can also change the way that the gauge layout looks. So right now we have this pretty basic circular display, but if we change it up, we get a slightly different display, but that one doesn't give us a tack. And then finally, we have this display, also doesn't give us a tack, but you can change up the layout. I don't think that a lot of Trax owners probably need a tack, but if you do, you can go for the layout number 1. And then this higher end trim also has a different layout for its climate panel. So you can see here, heated seats for both of the front passengers. And then actually, we also have a heated steering wheel.
But Case, I noticed something, that the Trax doesn't offer a built-in navigation system.
Yeah, so if you want to navigate, you will have to plug in your phone. Of course, here we have Apple CarPlay, and you know, I mean, most people these days use their phone to navigate anyway, so as long as you have Apple CarPlay, I don't really think that that's a killer, but it is one more feature that this car doesn't have, and that's part of how they help keep that price down.
Yeah, and if you're wondering why I plugged in, it also works wirelessly, but today it was a little laggy, like we talked about.
Yeah.
But Android Auto is also here, so even if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, you could still use that.
What I will say is one of the advantages of this car now being 4 inches lower, 2 inches wider, it's a little bit more flared out and more stable. Actually, stable enough that Chevy felt it necessary to provide for Andre as the passenger these C-bands, the natural choice for nausea relief, they claim.
Well, if I look at the Blue Ridge Parkway and if I focus on the road, I won't get sick.
It's definitely an entry-level vehicle, but there's really no problem with that. If you're okay with front-wheel drive only, then this is a perfectly acceptable car for you to commute in.
Yeah, so I mean, of course, if you live in the snow belt, you may have to consider all-wheel drive, but actually if you put decent snow tires or even all-weather tires on this, you could probably even go in the winter in this car.
Yeah, this car would be fine in Colorado, for example, on most of the front range around Denver and Boulder, where it's fairly flat. Would I want to take it up skiing? You could if you had aggressive snow tires, but it might not be my first choice.
Yeah, you don't want to be a meme on Instagram, right? I-70 things, you don't want to be there.
Yeah, no, and Chevy does make the Trailblazer, which you can get in all-wheel drive. So, yeah, so I'd say if you live in a more city type of environment, you don't need a ton of snow performance, then this is a good option. One thing that I do like about this car, though, compared to a lot of its competition, is the fact that it has a 6-speed automatic transmission instead of a CVT. So when you feel those gear shifts, that's not a CVT mimicking gear shifts, this is an actual automatic transmission, and these days that's getting harder and harder to find, and especially this class of car. Another advantage of this car being bigger than it used to be is the trunk space. Here behind the rear seats, we have 25.6 cubic feet of space. And you can see Andre and I have our camera bags here and our overnight bags, and there's plenty of room left over. And actually, if you fold these seats down, then you'll have 54.1 cubic feet of space. So a decent amount of room here. Underneath the load floor, you also have a compact spare tire. So it's not a full-size spare, but honestly, these days, more and more cars don't even have that. So at least there's something. Now, at 5'10", it's not that difficult for me to fit in the backseat of most cars, and especially not this one. Sat behind myself, I have plenty of headroom and knee room. What's a lot more impressive is that we actually were able to fit Andre in this back seat, and he's almost 6'3". Oh, and you also don't have a transmission tunnel down here, part of this being front wheel drive only, so a lot of space for your feet, even if you're in the middle. What you don't get are many amenities. We have a USB-A and a USB-C port back here, and those are both welcome additions, but in place of vents, we have a cubby. So if you live in either a place that gets particularly cold or a place that gets particularly hot, your backseat passengers are not going to be the most comfortable. We also don't have anything to fold down here. You do have some cup holders in the doors, but nothing all that convenient.
Do you want me to get in the car?
Yeah, do it.
Oh, okay.
Let's prove it.
All right. So, sitting behind you, Case. Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, I still have room. And if I just go all the way back, my hair touches the ceiling. But I think it's really comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, there's space enough for you to be in there. I will say though, not a lot of luxuries. Like, check out the door card.
Well, this is kind of where, you know, you're saving, of course, some money.
Check out these views.
What do you think about the Blue Ridge Park? Isn't it gorgeous?
Yeah, so this is actually, and it's funny because I'm from Atlanta, which is not that far from here. This is my first time in Asheville, and it's also my first time on the Blue Ridge Parkway. And this is a really incredible
and if it wasn't
road.
raining, you could see like lots of different scenery here.
Yeah, but I almost kind of like the misty background that we have here.
Mysterious, right?
Yeah, it is. It's so different from Colorado because Colorado is very dry. I always forget how green it is here.
You know what I think? I think this new Trax is a game changer.
Yeah.
I'm serious because I don't feel like penalized for being a $25,000 car.
Yeah.
You know, the interior looks nice. It's got nice accent colors. The seat feels comfortable. You got room in the back seat. And still affordable, right? The efficiency is not going to blow you away, like 30 mpg, like you said. But still, I think it's almost pretty much a game changer.
Especially when most cars are getting to be really expensive. And I mean, it seems like almost everyone is starting to move up market. Obviously, there's compromises in this car, but that's kind of what it takes to make a car at this price point. And those compromises, at least surface level, they're not glaringly apparent, you know? I mean, this drives plenty well, and you get plenty of features and amenities that you would want in a car. So like you said, it doesn't really feel like you're being penalized for getting a more entry-level vehicle, and that helps keep the price down. There's a lot to be said for that.
It's cool.
Finally, let's talk about pricing, because that is really the big draw with the new Trax, and it starts at $21,495. But if you get this more optioned RS model or the equivalent other top-end model, which is the Active, both of those start at $24,995. So just under 25 grand before any options. And for me personally, I would go with this RS trim because this vehicle is front-wheel drive only. I would go for the more sporty, street-focused version of it. If you want all-wheel drive, Trailblazer is going to be the way to go. If you don't need it, then this is probably going to be your best bet. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and we'll catch you all in the next video.